Oh. Okay. Let's begin. Okay, today we're going to start on Mem Daled Aleph 44a. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this chus of learning, Hashem, this in English, we need to. Let's start the Mishnah right away. I'll go back. I'll explain what happened before, which is very relevant. But it's the Mishnah. It's not a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah, but it's not with the words Mishnah before. It says Tanan. See it? It's like in the middle of the page. 3 lines before the white lines. Tanan was taught in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah. Ish Mekadosh is Bitek. No, is that our Mishnah? Shinara. That wasn't our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said Ish Mekadosh by B'shluchay. Ish Mekadosh is Bitek. Second half of the Mishnah. Ish Mekadosh is Bitek. Kishinara by B'shluchay. Okay, so that's exactly our Mishnah.
The second half of the Mishnah.
So it says that a man can marry off his daughter when she's 12 years old, which is the age that we've been talking about for the last day or two. And he can marry her off with the shliach as well. Now, if you look at that Mishnah, it says, he could do this, and he can make a shliach. However, if you're medayik, if you read it carefully, you see what this implies. It says he and his shliach, that's but her and her shliach not. That means that she does not have the ability to marry, get herself married. In other words, the kiddushin money needs to go to her father. Now, this takes us back to the machlekes. We had a machlekes between Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda regarding receiving her get. We're talking about the girl that's 12 years old, in between 12 and 12, where the Tanakama says that she can anara, where she can receive her get, and Rabbi Yehuda says that only the father can receive her get. We took that to another stage. What about receiving her kiddushin? So we had that's machlekes between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, if the same machlekes applies. Reish Lakish said that the same machlekes that's by gerushin is also by kiddushin, which means the Tanakama says that she can, yes, receive her own kiddushin, and Rabbi Yehuda would hold that she cannot. Rabbi Yochanan said that everyone holds that she cannot receive her kiddushin. So now we quote the Mishnah that says, Mishnah says that she cannot receive her own kiddushin to Raya, to Rabbi Yochanan, to Kasha and Reish Lakish. Well, it's only a Kasha and Reish Lakish according to the opinion of the Tanakam. Reish Lakish did say that it's a machlekes. He agrees that Rabbi Yehuda holds that you can't. So the Gemara says like this: Yufta de Reish Lakish. This sounds like a Kasha and Reish Lakish. Amalach Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish will say to you, Hanami Rabbi Yehudi. It's not a kasha on me. I never said that everyone holds that. I just said that it's a machlekes. So you're going to ask me a kasha. I'm going to tell you that this is following another opinion. That Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that holds that yes, only the father can accept the kiddushin. I only added in that the Tanakama argues. But okay, so this is not the Tanakama's opinion. Okay, he's going to be hard to pin against the wall, because he has 2 opinions there. Whatever you're going to find, I'll just tell you this other opinion.
I thought this whole thing was about the get.
Well, it started off with the get, and then we extend the Tanoim were arguing about the get. Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda arguing about the get. Then the Amirayim step in, Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, and they extend it over to kiddushin as well. Okay. Well, Mimatz is mukmas like Rabbi Yehuda, and can Reish Lakish really wiggle out this of that kasha and say that this Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda? The problem is that if you go further, the next Mishnah that's coming up in 2 days, here it says I'm Alicia, Scotchly Bitmarzu, Scotchly Bazu. How does this go? Baktani Seifa, but if you read further, it says, I'm Alicia, Scotchly Bitmarzu, Scotchly Bazu. Someone tells a woman, you should be married to me, you should be betrothed to me with this date. Not as in going on a date, but as in a date, as in appropriate date. So you should be married to me with the next date. So he said both. He gave her a date for each time he said that. Now, if they don't add up, I'm sorry, if each one independently is not a Shava Pruta, then that's not going to be a good marriage. And we say, Mantan Eskachi. Who's the opinion that holds that if someone says, you see, if he said, marry me with this date, and he gave her 2 dates, so then that would be fine. But the fact that he said a separate statement for each date means that it was a separate kiddushin and that they don't combine. Who's the opinion that holds that? Amar Rabba. Rabba says, Reb Shimon is the opinion of Reb Shimon. So what we're doing now, what we're setting this up, we tried to say that the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda to answer a question on Rish Lakish. We're going to see from the follow-up of the Mishnah that it's not Rabbi Yehuda, it's Reb Shimon. Well, Reb Shimon Idamar it's the opinion of Reb Shimon. Now we throw in another case. That's what the Gemara does. Throws in another story to explain what's happening here. If someone owes money, several different people, 5 people or whatever, and each one says, "You give me back what I gave you. Give me the deposit that you're holding of me, or give me whatever it is that you owe me," and he swears to each of them. He says, Shvua, that I don't know you, and I don't know you, and I don't know you, and I don't know you. And then it turns out he's a liar. He lied. So when he swears like that, he has to bring a sacrifice, he has to pay a 5th. Now, how many times did he swear? He swore once, and he just added all of these people in. If he would have said, I swear that I don't know you, and he said again, I swear that I don't know you, I swear that, but he says, I swear I don't know you knew. So then that's considered only one oath. Well, right. Shimon Hidamar that you have to divide it up. Now, when Shimon says that you have to divide it up,
in order to make yourself chayav in a
for each one, for each individual one. So
how's that relevant?
Because that comes back to hiskachli b'tmarazu, hiskachli, because he divided it into separate statements. So that's why you need to have enough for each one. You know, those statements divide. Each one needs its own Shava Pruta. Right. Value of a small coin. You mean like marry me with this?
This one's divided and this one's half.
No, he's just dividing it. It means that each one wasn't valid on its own. The question is how we look at statements like that. Do we look at them that it's all considered one? Or when it's because it was divided up? Well, let's take a look at this mission. We'll go through the details. It says, well, you know what? We could say that really the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda's view is that a girl cannot accept her own kiddushin. And that we saw from the statement of the Mishnah. It's only the father and his shliach, not the girl and her shliach. The naira cannot accept the kiddushin. However, when it comes to how you combine statements, that he follows like Reb Shimon. You're mixing in another. Has nothing to do with the rights of a girl accepting her own kiddushin. That's another machlokes. So he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and then those prati means the way it's divided up. Those details of how you divide up that oath, that he'll hold like Reb Shimon, and he'll say that you'll need to have the value of a pruta in each state. So, Umi Sabala, does he actually hold like Reb Shimon when it comes to those details? But Tanya, we have a brisa that says that klal. Here's the rule. We're going to go through the details over here of this major machlokes. Klal, if someone says altogether, he says a shvua that I don't know you, and he puts them all into one shvua. Ein chayav alachas. He's only chayav one because that's only one oath, right? We were talking about when he took the oath and then he lied. but it was in that oath, there was a bunch of statements to different people. Parat, but if he divides it up, then he's chayav al kalachas vachas. Then he's going to be chayav on each and every one. Divrei Meir, that's Rabbi Meir's rule. Rabbi Yehuda says, if he says shvua loylach 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 chayav al kalachas vachas. Rabbi Yehuda says no. The fact that he said loylach, not to you, is already dividing it up. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't agree with Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lezer Aimer loylach 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 shvua. Rabbi Lezer says that if you say shvua at the end, then chayav al kalachas vachas. But if you say shvua at the beginning, if he says to you, I swear that I don't know, so then that's considered
one.
Then it's considered that each one is separate. But if he starts it off with shvua as an oath that I don't know you, then it's only going to be one. And
what is the difference?
I'm sorry.
What difference does it make? If I swear that I don't owe you 100 and I don't owe the other guy 200 and the third guy 300, in either case, they get added up and the chumash would be the same.
Yeah. The amount of money is the same. The question is if it's considered an oath, each individual oath, and he's going to have to bring a separate carbon for lying for each one.
So it's the carbon, not the amount.
It's the carbon, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
you're
you.
going to have to owe them. And there is an extra fifth as well, but that doesn't matter. The extra 50 has to pay because he lied about all of it, right? It's only the carbon that would be the difference. Well, so Reb Shimon argues with Rabbi Yehuda. He says that it doesn't matter. He says, you have to actually divide each one up separately. Okay. Ella Kula Reb Shimoni. So the Gemara adjusted. It says, rather, everything here is Reb Shimon. However, what we thought we could do is we could say the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. And when it comes to dividing up the details, B'tmarazu, we'll follow Reb Shimon. But it turns out that we found the brisa that Rabbi Yehuda argues with Reb Shimon about dividing up those details. So we switch it the other way. We say, really, the whole Mishnah is Reb Shimon. And when it comes to if the girl is able to be a messenger or to be able to receive her kiddushin on her own, that he's going to hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon holds like Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Yehuda holds for Reb Shimon. Okay. Rabasi layal lebei midrasha. Rabasi didn't go to the base medrash just one evening. And Ashkela Reb Zera finds Reb Zera. Amalei, my Yamar Hidden Bei Midrash. He says, what are they saying in the base medrash? You were there. I wasn't able to make it. Amalei, Afanalei Ayal. I also wasn't able to make it. Rabavin Udayal, but Rabavin was there. And he said, Chavrusa Kula Karab Yechanan. It says that everyone was agreeing with Rabbi Yechanan. And Reish Lakish was screaming like a bird. I don't know what type of bird it is. Does it say? A crane. And screaming like a crane, saying that the marriage and divorce have to be equal. Right? That Yatsa means that she leaves and she gets married. That's a comparison that the Gemara does often. That says that the laws of marriage and laws of divorce need to be the same. So just like there's a machlaikas about a naira receiving her own get, Rish Lakish holds there's a machlaikas about a naira receiving her own kiddushin. Rabbi Yechanan said there's no machlaikas about that. Everyone agrees that she cannot. And Rish Lakish is screaming, and no one's listening to him. Amalei, so this is Rabasi telling to Reb Zera, Rabavin Bar Samchu, is Rabavin reliable? Amalein is for sure reliable. Because it was like taking the fish out of the ocean straight into the pot. In other words, there wasn't even time for him to forget. So it was perfectly, I was just there. It just happened. Okay. Amar of Nachum Yitzchak. Nachum Yitzchak says,
I know the first time it says about Rosh Lakish that he was screaming like
Kruchya. Yeah, we'd have to search that. I don't know. Oh, by the way, I want to tell you something nice. Rabbi Gazinski told me. Remember the Gemara that says you should always view yourself as half. You do one mitzvah and then you. So he said that there's in kiddushin there's 80 daf, and the Gemara that 81 daf. No, it's 80, it's 82. It doesn't work perfectly. 82 daf. Anyway, let's say there's 80 daf. He said, "Do you know where what daf that Gemara was?" He says it was on daf mem, and it starts at the beginning. Maybe it's mem aleph. Shiva. No, daf mem. On daf mem. So this Gemara, it starts lo'ilam yer adam. It starts on the bottom of mem amid aleph. It goes to mem amid beis. And to say you should always see yourself as half, because you finished half the Masechta and you started a new one. So that was his. Yeah, it doesn't fit perfectly, but I guess the way it would fit is because it starts on daf beis.
Okay.
So
you're taking off.
So you take off one. It's 82 daf. It's really 81 daf. So the daf mem, it would be the middle one. It does fit. Very good. Okay. So the Gemara over here says, "I know le Rabavin bar Chiya, le Rabavin bar Kana, el Rabavin Stam." Rav Nachman, it's because I don't know which Rabavin this is. I didn't hear if it's Rabavin bar Chiya or Rabavin bar Kana. I only heard Rabavin. Lamai Nafkamini says, "What's the difference?" It says the Mir Medidei Adidei. If I can create a contradiction by saying that he said already once somewhere else, and then I would need to know which Rabavin it is to have a question. Okay. Rav Amir Rav Nachman. Rav asks Rav Nachman. Rav has been asking Rav Nachman and saying things in the name of Rav Nachman quite often now. So it says, "Na Ramar Shitas Shliach lekabel gita miyad baila." This would be following the Rabbanan, not following Rabbi Yehuda. According to the Tanna Kama, that a girl is able, at least according to Rish Lakish, that a girl is able to. No, this is by a get. So this is according to everyone. This is according to everyone. Machlekes was by a get. This is not by kiddushin. Can a girl make a shliach to receive her get? It's called the shliach lekabbalah. Now we know that according to the Tanna Kama, the girl can receive the get on her own. She doesn't have to go to the father. She can receive the get. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to go to the father. But according to the Tanna Kama, she could receive it. But can she also make a shliach to receive it? Yeah, that's what we always learn. But now we're talking about a girl that's 12 years old, in between 12 and 12 and a half. A woman can, but this is the young girl. Do we say kiyada v'yadamya, that she's like the hand of her father? Like the chatzar v'yadamya. Or do we say, as the Gemara's understanding now, this is how the Gemara understands this, that she's not doing it on her own. She's doing it as an agent of her father. When she receives the get, because she's young, it's not an independent capability that she has to receive her get. It's because she is a proxy of the father. Now, what type of proxy is she?
She's not making a decision of her own. She's just receiving something.
She's just receiving, right? Yeah. Right. But what type of how is she receiving this? Do we say that she's like an agent of the father? She's like the hand of the father, and just like the father can receive it, she can receive it. Like a chatzar v'yadamya. Or do we say that she's like the courtyard of the father, and just like you can put it into his courtyard, and so you can also put it into her hand, and that's good enough. Now the Gemara explains the question. Kiyada v'yadamya. Do we say she's like the hand of the father? Ma'avia mashur shleach, hapinami mashur shleach. If she's the hand of the father, so well, the father can make her shleach. She can also make her shleach. Or do we say that she's like the courtyard, and it needs to reach her hand? It needs to reach the courtyard. There's no shliach of the courtyard, no courtyard of a courtyard, or a shliach of a courtyard. It has to be in the courtyard. It has to be in her hand. Yeah. So this is that where this is where she's only betrothed. She's not married. By a vow, they would both be doing it. Yeah, it'll bring up an interesting point. Okay. The Gemara says, does Rava really have a question about this? What type of agent the girl is? But Rava says, kasab get let's say the husband wrote a get and he put it in the hand of her slave. Okay, she has a slave. She has a slave, and instead of giving it to the get to his wife, he gave it to the slave. Well,
To give it to her.
no,
As a shliach.
no, not as a shliach. Just because he's allowed to put it in the courtyard, the slave is like a courtyard. So yashan u'mishamarte. Let's say the slave is sleeping, and she's watching him. She is guarding the slave, so it's considered a guarded courtyard, protected like a courtyard with the vents. No, it's like if the get goes into her protected courtyard, so then it's considered that she's divorced because it went into her property. Well, hareza get, that's good. But neyar, let's say the slave is awake, then ain't a get. It's not a good get. He has to be asleep and she's watching him. But if he's awake, it's not a good get. Neyar amayin a get. Why, if he's awake, is it not a good get? Because the havile chatzar mishtamesh leila daita. Because it's considered a courtyard that's watched without her knowledge. In other words, it has its own protection over it. It's not protected by her. And one of the limudim that we have by the get is that even though really the pasuk says it needs to be put into her hand, v'nasan biyada. Gemara learns out that it says v'nasan, that it could go anywhere. So what do you do with biyada? Gemara says what I do with biyada is that she needs to be guarding it. Just like her hand, she can guard. So we say that it doesn't need to actually go into the hand, but it needs to go into something that's guarded by her. So if he's awake, then he's guarding himself, the slave. It needs to be guarded by her, which means he's asleep and she's watching him. And if you say that she's like a courtyard, then how could you say, if she's like a courtyard, then how could you say that the courtyard works? She's awake. It's not with the father's intention. And if she's only really like this chutzner of the father, it must be that she's considered the hand of the father, not the courtyard. And the question is this a hand that's strong enough to make its own shliach or not? Or maybe it's already a shliach. That's where it stops. It says, Amalei. So who responds? Reb Nachman responds, "Ein a shliach. She cannot make a shliach." I'm always confused in the Gemara. I could have read it in Eisa shliach. But on the side I have this little note that says Eina Eisa shliach, which tells me that it means that she cannot. Eina Eisa shliach, right? I have a little note on the side. Anyway, okay, so she can't make a shliach. She cannot.
And actually, in the Gemara here it says Ein.
You have Eina?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I have Ein. And then with the note it says it's supposed to be Eina. Okay, Eisvei, the Gemara has a question. Katana Shamra Skabali Giti. Let's say there's a young girl, younger than 12. She's a katana, a minor, and she's getting divorced. So she tells an agent, "Receive my get for me." She's still in diapers. No. Anyway, she's a young girl. She tells the agent, "Receive the get." She's betrothed. Is she married? But I'm not sure. Right now, let's say she's betrothed. So Ina get she get the other. She needs to actually receive the get. In other words, her agent is not acting on her behalf because she can't make an agent. Her agent is acting on behalf of the husband. That's now a shliach lahilacha. You see, the difference is the husband sends a shliach to bring it. She sends a shliach to receive it. It's not really the shliach that receive. The difference between the shliach Kabbalah shliach lahilacha is that when she sends an agent to receive it, once the agent receives it, she's divorced. Even before it returns, the guy comes back and tells her she could already be remarried from
the husband.
So the shliach switches to be the shliach from the husband, becomes the shliach leilacha. When the get reaches her, then she's divorced because it
passes from shliach to shliach.
It transfers over. We had problems with that, with using one shliach to be both. but that's a different story. That's
Right, no, that was just.
that's when the shliach lahilacha wants to turn into a shliach lekabbalah. We said that he has to be able
Or
to go
become the
back.
husband himself.
He has to be able to go back and tell the husband that he did the message. He did the mission.
Rabbi, just remind me, the age when the girl can walk out.
That's until 12, but it's only when she wasn't married by her father.
So you just, right, with the brother.
Yeah.
In this case, she was married by the father. Or betrothed
Yeah.
by the father.
Yeah.
That's why had it been by the brother, she could have said, who cares about
Yeah.
the other?
Yeah.
Let's forget.
So it's not so practical.
Okay, I won't remember.
So Nara, we deduce from this, from Medayek, we see what this implies based on the statement that a child can't say this, but if it would be a naira, if it would be a 12-year-old, between 12 and 12 and a half, then her is a get, then she can make a shliach. It's a kasha on what Rav Nachman just said. We're talking about where she doesn't have a father. She doesn't have a father. Father must have died after the marriage.
Yeah.
So then she's able to make an agent because she becomes her own. She's doing this on her own. She's not doing it on behalf of her father. When she was doing it on behalf of her father, then she doesn't have the power to make an agent. But now the father passed away. She's the one that receives the get on her own. She can make an agent. That's how we answer the contradiction. We say it's a different scenario. It says 1 second. If you read further in that brisa, it says, Im Amar Aviyah. If the father said, Save a kabal get labiti, he sends someone to be an agent to receive the get for his daughter. So he makes a shliach lekabbalah, the father. Imratza abal achsarbay, and then before the get makes its way back, but once it's already been received by the agent, the husband says that I don't want to give the get. I changed my mind. She was a good wife as a second wife. She's good. No, she's a good wife. So la yachser, it's too late because he already gave the get. He already gave the get, which means that the agency works for the father. Now, michlal, that implies the reisha b'd'yesh la'avaskinan. We're talking about in the sefer. You're talking about where there's a father. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. Where there's a father here. Gemara says it's missing words. We can adjust this to say that at the beginning we're talking about when there's no father, and the sefer is when there's yes a father. We're going to read it again. If the child says, "Receive my get from me," then ain't a get. That's not a good get. Until it reaches her hands. Well, if it reaches her hands, then it's considered the messenger was considered shliach lahilacha, an agent from the husband, not an agent from her. She's too young to make an agent. Hanara, but if she's older, then her is a get. It would be a get. Well, even when the agent receives it, even before it reaches her, because she's older. But that's only that's only if she doesn't have a father, she's able to do that. But if she does have a father, then the father says to receive the get, then the father could do that agency, and it won't be the daughter. Okay, so we added in the words, say and then it fits with how we can divide up between the first case being without a father and the second with she does have a father. Okay. We're going to enter into a very interesting discussion here. You'll see. It's slightly complex, but we can handle it. Itmar. The statement goes like this. If there's a young girl that receives kiddushin without her father's knowledge, someone's going to get into trouble.
Yeah, right.
Okay, you're grounded. So anyway, what's going to happen now? So Amar Shmuel says shricha get, she needs a get, shricha miyan, and she also needs miyan. No, miyan would only be if the father's not around. Let's see.
Well, he wasn't involved.
Right.
He wasn't involved.
No, okay. Miyan means when she walks out of a marriage. You see, what miyan is she rejects the marriage without a divorce. She just walks out. She says, I'm not here. and she can do that only if it was a rabbinic marriage. You see, the reason why they even allowed the marriage to take place was they didn't want a young girl that's an orphan just to be left on the street and anyone could do anything with her and whatever. So what they said was that no, the brothers can marry her off, and usually a young girl can the only one that can marry her off would be the father. But they said no, the brothers and the mother, they can get involved and set her up with the marriage, but it's only rabbinic. And if she rejects that marriage, she can walk out. But that was an institution. That marriage was an institution to make things more safe for her.
Yeah.
Well,
It might be common with like estranged fathers.
right. We're going to have a case similar to that. Not exactly that case. But anyway, what's happening over here, she needs a get and she needs mian as well. The why right now, it's like, how does that work? Okay. Well, Karna says, Karna was a friend of Shmuel. Dvarim Begai. Dvarim Begai means there's things inside this. What how do they translate it?
Karna?
No, not
Dvarim
Karna.
Begai.
Karna is his name, but
There
what does he
are
say? Puzzling matters. Okay, Dvarim Begai. This is like a puzzling. Im get lama mian. If you need a get, then what do you need to do mian? In mian, and if you're doing mian lama get, then why do you need a get? So he said, what does he say that you really need? I don't know. He says that you only need one, but definitely no need both. Amalei, they told Karna, Hamarukva Beidina Bekafri. Why are you you're just saying it's puzzling? Why don't you ask Marukva? He's a student of Shmuel, and his Bezdin is close by. You can just go and ask Marukva. Anyway, it turns out Apchua Shadra Lekami Rav. They actually sent the question to Rav, not to Shmuel, to ask him what he meant. They sent it to Rav. The only thing is that Rav was close with Shmuel. They argued a lot, but they were friends, and they were afraid that he would be impressed by what Shmuel said. And so they switched it around. They said Shmuel said what Karna said, and Karna said what Shmuel said. So they switched the statements around so the name associated with it wouldn't be biased. Rav wouldn't. Well, Amalahu, after they switched it around, he says, Elikim, by God, that's like astonishing. It's like a surprise that they should even say that. Tzricha get a tzricha mian. Of course, you need a get and you need mian. Hashem should protect the descendants of Abba Barabba, who's the father of Shmuel, so that his descendants would say such a thing, that you don't need a get and you don't need mian. You don't need one. You don't need both. In other words,
Which was really Karna.
Which is actually this Karna that said that. In other words, Rav actually agreed with Shmuel on this, that you need both. But time am I. So what's going on over here? What's the reason? Amar Ravacha Breder Rav Ika Tzricha get. You need a get. Shemin Esratza Kiddushin. This is very interesting. Maybe the father actually was happy about this.
Was there, just that as a tichusa, is there Shmuel and Rav ever really agree, or always was it if Shmuel said something, Rav always tried to?
No, we have arguments.
With kids, no, yes.
We have arguments between Rav and Shmuel agree, and Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish disagree. So it's Rav and Shmuel would agree, and they argue with Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish. And then sometimes it's just Rav and Shmuel versus Rabbi Yechon or something like that. Okay. Why do you need a get? Because maybe the father would agree to this.
Considering you're two different countries.
Right.
It's like happening in different places, and you say, Zoom call?
I think they.
The same conclusion.
I think they would get together by, not the countries, but they would get together by Yarchei Kala. There was an agricultural society, so there were months where the people would just get together to study while they're waiting for the grain to grow. And then during that time, they were studying, so they would hear everyone's opinion, and then there would be travelers that would come and say, well, they say overnight to show differently. And they probably stayed in inns. Yeah. Called well, anyway. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So the time of Mai. So the reason for this is Ravacha Beit Ravika says Maybe the father agrees to the kiddushin. That's why you need to get. We have a very interesting concern. Maybe the father does not agree to that marriage, and really there was no marriage there. The Yoimru, and they'll say, "In kiddushin teifsim b'chaysa." Listen to this problem. This fellow tried to marry a young girl, Rachel. Turns out the father didn't agree to Rachel, but we didn't know. We required a get for Rachel. Then this fellow decides that he wants to marry Leah, her sister. Now you can't marry the sister of your divorcee, so he marries this Leah, and we say that's not a marriage. There's no marriage there. It's the sister. You're not allowed to. There's no marriage. So they just walk out, and there was no marriage. Really, there was a marriage because the father never accepted the first marriage, which means that the second marriage was a real marriage, and he actually requires a get. So in order to make sure that the second marriage to the sister, he doesn't just walk out without a get, so we have to put some question on the first marriage by doing miyun. What the miyun does, it says the first marriage was not necessarily a marriage. If there would have been miyun on the first marriage, and there was never a marriage there, then the marriage to Leah would be the real marriage. And then that would require a get. So in order to make sure that Leah gets a get, so we do miyun on Rachel's marriage together with the get.
Wow.
First
He marries
Yeah,
Let's
so
see.
we learned this once before.
Oh, it could
So
be.
she gets both at that same time. The get and the miyun
She
at
gets
the same
get and
time.
miyun. The get is more the serious one. The miyun is just because of another problem that may come up if Ruvain or whoever it is that's marrying decides to marry Leah. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says that this that you just mentioned, that it could be the father would agree to the marriage. That's v'husha shadchu. That's because they were discussing it beforehand. There was a shadchan, and they're discussing. Boy, do I have a girl for you, and right, and that's why we're concerned. Maybe the father would agree. Ula says that you don't need miyun. You only need a get. Why? Actually, no. Actually, not. You don't need a get at all. You don't need anything. Paul says you don't need a get. You don't need miyun. You don't need anything. Why? He says that we're not concerned that maybe the father agreed to the marriage. The Gemara asks, "Afgad the shidchu?" But what about if they were talking about it before? It says, "Man de masniha le masniha." The way we have to learn this is, Rav Nachman was the one that introduced that they were discussing it before. Ula didn't learn like that they were discussing it before. And because Ula didn't learn like that, so he says that he argues, he says you don't need even miyun. Nothing. I don't have a concern that maybe the father later on is going to say, I'm really happy with that. Those that said, Ula said the statement independently. Ketana that gets married without her father's knowledge, it doesn't need miyun. Doesn't need anything. It's nothing. Master Rav Kana has a question. Remember the first Mishnah in Yavamis? The first Mishnah in Yavamis basically had 15 different cases. One of them could be, let's say, there was a man that marries his niece. All right? Like, for example, Sarah is the daughter of Asher, right? So let's say God decides to marry Sarah. Marries his brother's God and Asher. Marries his brother's daughter. Okay. No, it's permitted from both. Yes. Permitted from both. Then he marries some other wives as well, right? In those days, he can marry other wives. Anyway, God passes away. Now, Asher needs to do Yibam. Now, because his daughter is one of those wives, he can't marry his daughter. His brother was allowed to marry his daughter, but he can't marry his daughter. And now the brother passed away, he has to do Yibam. He's supposed to marry the widows. So not only doesn't he do Yibam on his daughter, but he doesn't have to do Yibam on any of the other wives. Those other wives are called Saris. They're called the rival wives. The rival one. Everyone is exempt. However, let's say Serach passed away. Serach never passed away, right? But let's say Serach passed away, and before God passed away, so then they do Yibam. In Mesu, Imina, in Eskarsha, Shnim Silence, so same with her. Or they were divorced, or whatever. Or let's say God decided to divorce his niece. So then Usher would have to do Yibam on those other wives. Okay. Well, the Kid Shaman. Who married? Now, one of those cases was Mian. If the girl walked out. Now, how did you do Mian? Elaim of the Kid Shavia. For Mian Saga, let's say the father did the kiddushin. You see, the father's still around. Because one of the cases is that she's now can't marry the father. So the father's still around. So how did you do Mian? So if the father did the marriage, so it's Mian enough, get Malyaboy, then you need a get. Elalav, the Kitchi Nafsha. It must mean that she did the marriage. And when she does the marriage without her father's consent, it's a kasha on Ula. Ula tells me that if a child gets married, you don't need Mian. You really do need Mian. Because we have this Mishnah that's proving that there was a case of Mian. It says, who asked the question? Rav Khan asked the question, Rav Khan answers it. We're talking about where she was an orphan while her father was alive. How does that work? It means the father married her off, and then she got divorced. Once she was fully married, she's out of the father's house. She was fully an adult. She's still a child, but so because she doesn't. Once she's fully married, then the father doesn't have those rights to her anymore, and she's considered a child. She's considered a independent from the father, but she's still a child. She lives under her home. That's possible, but he doesn't have those rights anymore to marry her off, and she could do Mian on her next marriage. So that's how there's Mian here. Masav Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna has a question. Ein Michael Lekrevim, talking about an Amahevriya. This we had a machlekes before. Amahevriya is a young girl that's being sold as a slave. There's a mitzvah for the master or his son to marry this young girl. Right? It's called Yiyud, that marriage. Well, the father of this girl is not supposed to sell his daughter as a slave to relatives, because then he can't do the mitzvah. They can't do the mitzvah of Yiyud because they can't do the marriage. So Rav Hamnuna says, "Ein Michael Lekrevim." Rishon Rabbi Lezer, Michael Lekrevim. Rabbi Lezer says you can't do the mitzvah of Yiyud, but she can still be a slave. B'shavin, but everyone would agree that a widow could become a slave to a kain gadol, even though that's a forbidden marriage. But because it would still, yes, it's still a marriage. It's just forbidden, right? So it's a law. It's prohibited for them to marry, or a grush v'chulitza kain hedid, or she was already divorced. She could be a slave in the house of a kain hedid. She's a minor. Yeah, so now the problem is that one little point over here is that she's a minor. Yeah. So how did she become a widow? How did she become a widow? Are we talking about where the father did the kiddushin? Can he sell her again after he married her off once? Once he marries her off, he can never sell her again as a slave. It must be that she married herself off. And she's called a widow. See? She can do her own marriage. The brothers can't sell her as a slave, only the father. The father's still around. She's able to do her own kiddushin. She got married first, then she's a widow. Now she's getting sold into a new marriage to a kain gadol, and she's getting sold as a slave to a kain gadol. So Rab Amram says the name of Rab Yitzchak. We're not talking about that the father sold her in marriage, gave her in marriage. The father gave her as a slave, sold her as a maidservant, and then the master decided to marry her. So 1 second, but that's the father doing that marriage. Says no, it's not. The father wasn't involved in the yiyud. if the original money that went to the father when he sold her would be the kiddushin money of the yiyud, then we would say that the father did the marriage, and then he can't sell her afterwards. But we're saying here that the father just sold her as a slave, and the marriage has nothing to do with that original money. The marriage has to do with what's the kiddushin is the rest of the term of the that she doesn't need to serve. That's the money of the kiddushin. So that goes directly to her. So that's a year that she's able to. That's a type of marriage that she's able to do without the father. Now the father can still sell her again because he never sold her in marriage. It's more. Yeah.
What if like he decides to marry her right when she turns 12? He would have to give her kiddushin money because at 12 she can.
No, then no, it's just free already. If it's before, then not. And if yes, when there's one pruta left, then she can still do it. Well, Itmar. Mace for nafla l'fnei achiv liyibam. Talking about this girl that did a marriage without her father's consent. Very independent girl. She met someone on online. The guy does a marriage, and now the husband died. He didn't say that he was 80. Okay, so Mace now he has to do yibam. She has to do yibam to his brothers, right? Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav Mema'enes Lama'amar Avena Mema'enes Lasikasi. Rav Huna says in the name of Rav that the only time that you have that if the brother does mimer, remember that sort of kiddushin, then we're going to have a miyan as well. But if there's no mimer, then there's no miyan. Ketzad, well, what's the case? Asaba mimer, let's say this brother decides to do mimer. He says, I'm going to marry, he gives her kiddushin. So tricha get, tricha chalitza, tricha miyan. Again, we don't know if the father agreed to the original marriage. She got married without her father's consent. If the father consents, then that's a discussion. That's okay. Tricha get shemenisratzav b'kedusha sheni. She needs a get from this because the brother gave her kiddushin. Maybe even if the father didn't agree to the first marriage, but maybe he agrees to the second marriage, and that requires a get. Tricha chalitza needs chalitza shemenisratzav b'kedusha rishon. Maybe the father agreed to the first marriage. Now he died. Now she needs chalitza from the second. We have a concern that maybe the first marriage the father doesn't agree to. The second marriage the father doesn't agree to. But he does like her sister. And this second marriage is going to go and marry the sister. We're going to say that maybe
not whole.
Maybe that's not a good marriage at all. And the truth is that really it is a good marriage. And he's going to walk out of that marriage without a get. So in order to show that it's not real, that the first two marriages weren't really good, we have to do a miyan on them to show that this third marriage, the sister, is going to be a good marriage, which will require a get. But if there's no maimer, then you only require chalitza. Okay, my amrit. What are you going to say? But let's say he decides to marry the sister of the girl that he just did chalitza on. What's the problem? You're going to say that there's no kiddushin there? We know and everyone knows that the sister of the chalutza there is a marriage there in midrabanan. That midaraisa there's a marriage. It's only not a marriage midrabanan, and therefore we're going to know that she requires a get. Rebbe said like this. If someone marries a girl and he dies and the brother does chalitza, no, the brother the brother was married to the sister. Two sisters, Rachel and Leah, and the husband of one of them dies. The brother needs to do chalitza, but he can't because he's married to the sister. So in that case, no, someone did chalitza already, and then his brother marries the sister of the chalitza, and then he dies. Then it lets us okay, whatever the complication over here is, whatever it is, when it comes to a sister of a chalitza, everyone knows that you're going to require a get anyway. So we're not going to be concerned that maybe there's going to be a marriage to the sister and he's going to go out without a get, because by the chalitza there will be a get. You're going to require a get anyway, so we don't need to do miyah. Okay, let's leave it over here. Look at honey right. Yeah.
Okay. What's the bottom of this page?
Yeah.
The wife